My brother inherited our childhood home while I got $50,000. So I charged him rent. My family called me heartless. There are certain things you expect from family. Love, support, the occasional argument over whose turn it is to do the dishes. But there are also things you don't expect, like the moment you realize that the people who raised you valued one child more than the other, and that the house you grew up in was never really yours at all. My name is Daniel. I'm 34 years old, a middle school history teacher in a small town in Virginia. My brother, Thomas, is 36, and he's always been the golden child. Not because he worked harder or earned it, but because he was born first, and in my family, that seemed to matter more than anything else. Our childhood home was a 3-bedroom colonial on Maple Street, the kind of house that looks like it belongs on a postcard. White siding, black shutters, a porch swing that creaked in the summer breeze, and a magnolia tree in the front yard that bloomed every spring with flowers the size of dinner plates. My father built that house with his own hands, not literally, he was an accountant, but he oversaw every detail of its construction. He hired the contractors, chose the materials, and spent every weekend for 2 years on that property, making sure every nail was driven straight and every corner was perfectly square. It was his pride and joy, his legacy, the thing he talked about more than anything else. At family gatherings, he'd point out the crown molding he'd insisted on, the custom kitchen cabinets he'd designed, the fireplace mantel he'd salvaged from a 19th-century farmhouse. He loved that house with an intensity that sometimes seemed to exceed the love he had for his own children. "I want this house to stay in the family," he'd say, patting the wall like it was a living thing. "Your mother and I worked hard for this. It's yours someday." He said, yours. Plural. Ours. But I should have known better. My father, Richard, was a quiet man. He showed love through action, not words, fixing my bike when it broke, paying for my college textbooks without being asked, showing up to my school plays even though I knew he found them boring. He wasn't a bad father. But he had a blind spot, and that blind spot was Thomas. Thomas was everything I wasn't. Charismatic, charming, the kind of person who walked into a room and immediately became the center of attention. He played sports, baseball, football, basketball, and was good enough at all of them to earn varsity letters. He had a million friends, could talk his way out of any trouble, and seemed to glide through life without ever encountering a real obstacle. My parents adored him. Not because he earned it, but because he was easy to adore. He made them laugh. He made them proud. He was the son they could brag about at dinner parties. I was the quiet one. The one who liked books and history and spending weekends alone. I wasn't a disappointment, I was a good student, never got into trouble, went to college and got a teaching credential. But I was boring. Unremarkable. The kind of child parents don't worry about because they don't think about them at all. I remember a specific Thanksgiving when I was 16. Thomas had just been named MVP of his baseball team, and my parents couldn't stop talking about it. They showed the trophy to every relative who walked through the door. Meanwhile, I'd just won the school's history essay contest, a regional competition that I'd worked on for months. When I mentioned it, my mother nodded and said, "That's nice, honey," before turning back to Thomas. I accepted it. I made peace with it. I built my own life, independent of my family's attention. I moved away for college, stayed away for grad school, and only came back for holidays. I told myself I didn't need their validation. But I did. I always did. Then my father got sick. It was sudden. Pancreatic cancer, diagnosed too late, spreading too fast. 6 months from diagnosis to the funeral. My mother, Patricia, was devastated. She'd been married to him for 42 years, and she didn't know how to exist without him. Thomas and I both came home for the funeral. I took a leave of absence from my teaching job. Thomas flew in from Chicago, where he was working in pharmaceutical sales, and stayed for a week. He'd been living there for 8 years, climbing the corporate ladder, making good money. We'd grown apart, the distance and the years had created a gulf between us, but we both came back for our father. We had a small service at the church my parents had attended for 30 years. Afterward, my mother asked us to stay for a few days to help with the paperwork. "I can't do this alone," she said, her voice fragile. "There's so much to figure out. The bank accounts, the insurance, the house." We stayed. We helped. We went through boxes of documents and made endless phone calls. And then came the reading of the will. The lawyer, a man named Harrison who'd been my father's friend since college, gathered us in the living room, the same living room where I'd opened Christmas presents and watched Sunday football and celebrated every milestone of my childhood. The sunlight filtered through the same curtains, falling on the same worn carpet. Everything looked the same. Nothing would ever be the same. My mother sat on the couch, her hands folded in her lap. Thomas sat beside her. I sat in the armchair by the window, watching the afternoon light shift across the floor. "Richard's will is straightforward," Harrison said, his voice measured and careful. He wanted to make sure Patricia was taken care of first. "The house goes to her, of course, along with the retirement accounts and the life insurance. After Patricia passes, the house will go to the children." I nodded. That made sense. The house was always supposed to stay in the family. Then Harrison continued. "The house is to be inherited by Thomas, as the eldest son. Daniel, you're to receive a cash sum of $50,000 from the life insurance policy." I felt the words hit me like a physical blow. The house I'd grown up in, the house my father had promised to both of us, was going to Thomas. I was getting $50,000. $50,000. Less than a year's salary. While Thomas was getting a house worth nearly $500,000. "I don't understand," I said, my voice strange and distant. "Dad always said the house was for both of us." He said, "Yours." He said it over and over. Harrison looked uncomfortable. He shifted in his chair, adjusted his glasses, avoided my eyes. "Richard's wishes were clear, Daniel. I'm sorry." He felt very strongly about this. Thomas didn't say anything. He just sat there, looking at his hands, not meeting my eyes. I wanted him to say something, to protest, to argue, to say that this wasn't fair. He didn't. My mother broke the silence. "Your father loved you both. He felt that Thomas needed the house more. You have your own life, your own career. Thomas has been struggling, Anne." "Struggling?" I heard my voice rising. "He makes 6 figures in sales. He's been struggling because he spends everything he earns. I'm a teacher. I make $40,000 a year. If anyone needs the house, it's me. Daniel, please." "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm not angry. I'm just confused. Disappointed. I thought Dad believed in fairness. I thought he loved us equally. He did. He did believe in fairness. But you have to understand, Thomas is the eldest. It's tradition. Your father was traditional in many ways. Tradition. The oldest excuse in the book. The justification for every injustice, every slight, every time I'd been overlooked in favor of my golden child brother. Tradition meant I got less because I was born second. Tradition meant my brother got everything because he was born first. I didn't argue. What was the point? The will was clear. The house was Thomas's. I was getting $50,000. I left the house that evening and didn't come back for a month. I couldn't bear to look at the living room, at the mantel my father had built, at the walls that held 40 years of memories. Every corner of that house reminded me of what I'd lost. A year after my father's death, my mother passed away. She'd never really recovered from losing my father, her health declined steadily, and eventually, her heart gave out in her sleep. The doctors said it was peaceful. I hope it was. The funeral was smaller this time. Thomas and I stood side by side at the grave, staring at the twin headstones that marked the end of our parents' lives. "It's just us now," Thomas said, his voice hollow. "Just us." I didn't feel closer to him. If anything, the distance had grown. The resentment I'd felt since the reading of the will had calcified into something harder, colder. I didn't hate Thomas, he hadn't written the will. But I couldn't look at him without remembering that he'd gotten everything I'd been promised. Thomas moved into the house 3 months after the funeral. He'd been living in Chicago, but his sales job had dried up, the company had restructured, and he'd been laid off. Rather than finding a new job in the city, he decided to take some time to figure things out, in Virginia. The house was his. He could do whatever he wanted with it. He didn't, of course. He didn't clean it, maintain it, or do any of the things a responsible homeowner should do. He just existed in it, sleeping in his childhood bedroom, eating takeout, watching TV in the living room where we'd once been a family. I visited once, a few months after he moved in. The house was a wreck. Dishes piled in the sink, dust on every surface, the yard overgrown and wild. The magnolia tree had dropped its flowers and no one had raked them. The porch swing was covered in cobwebs. The kitchen counter was buried under pizza boxes and empty bottles. "What are you doing?" I asked, looking around. "I'm figuring things out." "Give me time." "Time for what?" "You've been here for months. You haven't done anything." "I've been grieving. Both of our parents are dead, Daniel. Excuse me for not being productive. I'm grieving too. But I'm not letting the house rot. Don't be dramatic. I'll get to the cleaning eventually." "You've said that before." He shrugged. "Then I'll say it again. I'll get to it." I left that day feeling furious. The house my father had poured his soul into was falling apart. The magnolia tree was being choked by weeds. The porch swing was rusting. The memories were fading, replaced by the smell of stale takeout and neglect. I made a decision. "I'll pay someone to clean it," I told Thomas over the phone. "Out of the $50,000 Dad left me." "Whatever." I paid a cleaning service to deep clean the house. It cost me $800. I didn't ask Thomas to reimburse me, I knew he wouldn't. A few months later, the yard needed mowing. Thomas ignored it. The grass grew knee-high, and the neighbors started complaining. I hired a landscaping company. Another $400. The gutters started leaking. The front porch steps began to rot. The roof developed a small leak that I noticed during a rainstorm. Each time, I paid for the repairs. Each time, Thomas shrugged and said, "I'll get to it eventually." I realized I was subsidizing his lifestyle. I was using my $50,000, the only inheritance I'd gotten, to maintain a house that wasn't mine. And Thomas was doing nothing. Meanwhile, my life continued. I taught my classes, graded papers, went to bed early. I was dating someone, a woman named Maya, a librarian with a gentle smile and a patient heart. We talked about the future, about moving in together, about maybe getting married someday. But I couldn't move forward. Not with the house hanging over me like a cloud. Every time I thought about my future, I saw the house that should have been mine, the house that was being destroyed by my brother's neglect. So I made a decision. I would charge Thomas rent. Not the full market value, the house was worth $1,500 a month in rent, easily, but $500 a month. Enough to cover the property taxes, the insurance, the minimal maintenance. Enough to remind him that living in a house someone else could have inherited wasn't free. "Are you serious?" Thomas asked when I told him. His voice was a mix of disbelief and anger. "Completely serious. You're living in a house that Dad left you. I don't begrudge you that. But I'm not going to subsidize your lifestyle. Pay rent, or I'll take legal action to force you to pay. You can't do that. The house is worth $500,000. I got $50,000. That's not fair. You know it's not fair. And I'm not going to sit back and let you live off my share of Dad's legacy without contributing. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, could picture him running his hand through his hair the way he did when he was stressed. Fine, he said. I'll pay $500 a month. He didn't pay the first month. Or the second. By the third month, I was preparing a small claims court filing when he finally showed up with a check. Here, he said, shoving it into my hand. Happy? I'm not happy. I'm trying to be fair. Fair? You're trying to punish me. I'm trying to wake you up. You have a house, Thomas. A house most people would kill for. You're letting it rot because you can't get your life together. My life is fine. Is it? You don't have a job. You don't have friends. You don't have anything except this house and a dwindling inheritance. He didn't respond. He just turned and walked away. I deposited the check. I didn't feel good about it. But I also didn't feel bad. I felt justified. I'd been taken advantage of for too long. It was time to stand up for myself. The situation escalated over the next 6 months. Thomas paid rent sporadically, sometimes on time, sometimes late, sometimes not at all. I started charging late fees, which infuriated him. He'd show up at my apartment, shouting about how unfair I was, how I was punishing him for Dad's decision. I didn't make Dad's decision, I told him. I didn't ask to be overlooked. I'm just trying to survive. You're trying to control me. I'm trying to make you take responsibility. There's a difference. We went in circles. Our relationship, already strained, became almost non-existent. We communicated only through texts and emails, each one colder than the last. I stopped calling him on his birthday. He stopped inviting me to holidays. Then my aunt got involved. Aunt Margaret was my mother's sister, a retired schoolteacher who'd never married and had no children of her own. She'd always been close to both of us, acting as a mediator during family disagreements. She was the one who'd held us together after our parents died, the one who remembered our birthdays and sent cards and made sure we didn't completely drift apart. She called me one evening, her voice gentle but firm. Daniel, I hear you've been charging Thomas rent. Thomas told you? He came to me. He's very upset. He says you're trying to take the house from him. I'm not trying to take the house. I'm trying to get him to pay his fair share. He's been living there for 2 years without contributing anything. Your father's will was very clear. I know what the will said. I also know that I was cheated. Not by Dad, by life, by circumstance, by the fact that I was born second. Thomas got a house. I got $50,000. How is that fair? Aunt Margaret was quiet for a moment. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. Fairness isn't always equal, Daniel. Your father loved both of you. He made the decision he thought was best. Was it best for me? He thought you could take care of yourself. He worried about Thomas. He always worried about Thomas. He worried about Thomas because Thomas never took care of himself. Perhaps. But that doesn't mean you should punish him. He's your brother. He's the only family you have left. I'm not punishing him. I'm asking him to contribute. There's a difference. I think you should reconsider. For the sake of your relationship. You'll regret it if you let this destroy the bond between you. I thought about our relationship. The years of distance, the growing resentment, the way we'd become strangers who shared a childhood. I thought about the Christmas dinners we'd never have again, the family reunions that would be empty, the future holidays where we'd be on opposite sides of the country. I'll think about it, I said. But I'm not promising anything. I thought about it. I thought about it for weeks. I talked to Maya, who listened without judgment and offered advice I didn't always want to hear. Daniel, I understand your anger. I really do. But is this worth losing your brother over? Am I losing him, or is he losing me? Does it matter? You're both losing something. I knew she was right. I knew that the anger was eating me alive, that the resentment was poisoning every aspect of my life. But I also knew that I'd spent 30 years being the one who sacrificed, the one who accepted less, the one who made peace while everyone else took what they wanted. I wasn't going to back down this time. I couldn't. The final confrontation came at Christmas. Thomas had invited me to the house, the old house, our house, for what he called a family reconciliation. I arrived with Maya, who had agreed to come for moral support, and was met with a tense silence. Thomas was there, along with Aunt Margaret and a few other relatives. The house looked better than it had. Thomas had clearly cleaned up, if not for my benefit, then for his. The magnolia tree was trimmed. The porch swing was painted. The kitchen counters were clear. We exchanged awkward greetings, ate a strained dinner, and then Thomas asked to speak to me alone. We walked to the back porch, the same porch where we'd sat as children, watching fireflies and plotting our futures. Daniel, I want to stop fighting. Okay. I'm not paying rent anymore. I can't afford it. You can afford it. You just don't want to. The house is mine. You can't charge me to live in my own house. The house is yours. The property taxes, the insurance, the maintenance, those are also yours. I've been subsidizing your lifestyle for 2 years. That's not fair. Nothing about this situation is fair. Then let's make it fair. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. I could see him wrestling with something, could see the conflict on his face. If I stop paying rent, he said, what will you do? I looked at him. My brother. The golden child. The one who'd always gotten everything. I'll take legal action, I said. I'll force the sale of the house. And I'll take half the proceeds. You can't do that. I can. The house was marital property. Mom inherited it. Then she died, and it passed to you. But I have a claim, I'm the other child. If I can prove I was unfairly excluded, I can challenge the will. You're threatening me. I'm giving you a choice. Pay the rent. Or sell the house and give me half. Those are your options. Thomas stared at me, his face pale. You destroy the family for money? I'm not destroying anything. I'm asking for what I deserve. The conversation ended. Thomas wouldn't speak to me for the rest of the night. Maya and I left early, the weight of the argument hanging over us. I'm sorry you had to see that, I told her in the car. I'm sorry you had to live through that. Your brother is entitled. I know. But I'm done enabling it. I thought about what I'd said. The threat of legal action. The possibility of forcing a sale. I knew it was aggressive, maybe too aggressive. But I also knew that I'd spent 30 years being the one who backed down, who accepted less, who let Thomas take everything while I made do with nothing. I wasn't going to back down this time. Months passed. Thomas continued not paying rent. I continued planning legal action. I contacted a lawyer, started gathering documents, and prepared to challenge the will. The process was expensive and exhausting, but I was determined to see it through. Then Thomas called me. I'm ready to talk, he said. No lawyers. Just us. Please. We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop near my apartment. Thomas looked different. Thinner. Tired. The kind of tired that comes from carrying something heavy for too long. His eyes were shadowed, his clothes were rumpled, and he looked like he hadn't slept well in weeks. I've been doing a lot of thinking, he said. About Dad. About the house. About the way I've been living. Okay. You're right. I've been entitled. I've been coasting on Dad's money, never taking responsibility for anything. And I've treated you badly. I should have fought for you when we read the will. I should have said something. Why didn't you? I was scared. I just lost my job. My life was falling apart. The house felt like the only thing I had. I knew it wasn't fair, but I didn't want to lose it. I waited. He took a deep breath. I'm not going to make excuses. I was jealous. Of your career, of Maya, of the way you built a life for yourself while I was still trying to figure out who I was. I looked at you and saw everything I wasn't: stable, responsible, content. And it made me feel worse about myself. I didn't know you were jealous. I was. I am. But that's not your problem. It's mine. Thomas took another deep breath. I'm going to sell the house, he said. I was stunned. What? I'm going to sell it. I'll split the proceeds with you. 50-50. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. Because you were right, I've been taking advantage of you. Because Dad was wrong, and I've been too scared to admit it. Because Aunt Margaret helped me see things clearly. The house is just a building. It's not worth destroying our relationship over. I felt something shift in my chest. Relief, maybe, or gratitude. The anger I'd been carrying for years started to loosen its grip. You're sure? I'm sure. I've already talked to a realtor. I'm going to move to Colorado. I have a job offer there, sales, but it's legit this time. A new start. And us? Thomas smiled, a real smile, the first I'd seen in years. We'll figure it out. We're still brothers. That's not going to change. The sale took 3 months. The house sold for $475,000. After fees and taxes, we each received approximately $200,000. I used my share to buy a house with Maya. She cried when we signed the papers, happy tears, the kind you cry when you've been waiting for something for so long that it doesn't feel real. The house wasn't our childhood home. It wasn't the house our father built. But it was ours, and that was enough. Thomas moved to Colorado. He calls every few weeks, and we talk, not about the house, not about the past, but about the future. His job is going well. He started dating someone. He says he's happy. I'm happy too. The question that started this, was I wrong to charge my brother rent? I've answered it 1,000 times. Here's what I've decided. No. I wasn't wrong. The house was supposed to be for both of us. My father's will was unfair, and I spent years swallowing the injustice. Charging Thomas rent wasn't about the money, it was about making him see that he couldn't coast through life on other people's sacrifices. Could I have handled it differently? Probably. I could have been gentler. I could have let it go. I could have accepted my $50,000 and moved on. But I didn't. Because I was tired of being invisible. Tired of being the one who made do. Tired of watching my brother take everything while I accepted nothing. Thomas finally understood that. Not because I won. Because I was willing to fight for what was right. The door my father opened wasn't just an exit from his expectations. It was an entrance to my own life. I walked through. And on the other side, I found my brother. It's been 2 years since the sale. Maya and I are married now. We live in a small house on a quiet street, with a garden in the back and a dog who thinks he's the center of the universe. I still teach middle school history. Maya still works at the library. We're not rich, but we're comfortable. We have enough, and that's all we need. Thomas comes to visit once a year. He's doing well, his job in Colorado has turned into a career, and he's engaged to a woman who makes him laugh. We don't talk about the house anymore. We don't talk about Dad's will. We talk about our lives, our plans, our futures. The inheritance money is in a savings account. I use it for emergencies, for vacations, for the occasional splurge. Maya and I talk about having kids someday, and I think about the house they'll grow up in, not a legacy, not a burden, just a home. My mother would be proud. My father, I don't know. He made his choice. I made mine. I think about the night I decided to charge Thomas rent. The anger, the resentment, the cold certainty that I was right. I was right. But being right isn't the same as being happy. I'm happy now. Not because I won. Because I stopped fighting. Thomas and I talk on the phone every few weeks. The relationship is different now, more equal, more honest. We don't pretend we're close, but we're not strangers anymore. That's enough. Aunt Margaret sends us Christmas cards every year. She's proud of us, she says. Of both of us. Your father would be proud too, she wrote in her last card. He loved you both. Even if he didn't show it the right way. I wanted to believe that. I'm trying to believe it. The question that haunted me, was I wrong, doesn't haunt me anymore. No. I wasn't wrong. But I was angry. And anger, no matter how justified, has a way of consuming you. I've let it go. Not because I've forgiven my father or my brother or anyone else. Because I've chosen peace over being right. The house is gone. The inheritance is gone. The resentment is gone too. And I'm finally free. Today, a letter to my father. Dear Dad. I know you can't read this. But I need to write it anyway. I was angry at you for years. For the will. For choosing Thomas. For making me feel like I wasn't enough. But I understand now. You weren't trying to hurt me. You were trying to help him. You worried about him. He was the one who needed you. I didn't need you. I needed something else. I needed you to see me. To tell me I mattered. To choose me, just once. You didn't. And that's okay. I've made peace with it. I'm doing well. I'm happy. Maya is wonderful, and we have a good life together. Thomas and I are talking again. He's doing well too. I'm not going to let the past define me. I'm not going to let the house, or the inheritance, or the will control who I am. I'm your son. I always was. And that's enough. I love you. Daniel. Which side of that story were you on? Let me know in the comments. And if you love diving into these Reddit rabbit holes with me, subscribe to Reddit Be Mine. We're building the best storytelling community on YouTube, and we'd love to have you. Click that sub button and stay tuned.